Welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. Today I'm going to talk to you about another underrated film. I got some PlayStation music going on. The original PlayStation classical musics. Just got a bunch of games on there which I never heard of play. But the music there, it sounds pretty interesting. Hopefully you don't hear it. But today I'm going to talk to you about another underrated film that I've loved since it came out. At first I was like, but it kind of grew on me. Um, And the reason I was like, because the structure of it felt a little bit different. But over time, I grew to enjoy films that try to do something different with their structure. And this is a Ridley Scott film, and this is Body of Lies, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell Crowe, Mark Strong, and it's a spy action thriller centered on a CIA operative who needs to go through lengths and establishes connections and in relationships with Jordanian intelligence while also trying to help um, follow his boss's instructions to tackle down. I don't know if I can say this word. Um, Evildoers that is trying to bomb a lot of the European continents around. And the reason I say that this is the structure of this film is a little bit different because it feels like they're chapters a bit, but each chapter centers on a location of where the film is taking place, and it takes majority of the film takes place all over in the Iranian, Jordan districts and cities and desert. It's very out there when it comes to um maybe guerrilla style kind of settings where everything feels gritty, rough, and it adds a lot of realism to this film. Leonardo DiCaprio as Roger Ferris, and this is also based off a novel. I believe this is one of his best performances, and it's actually interesting to see this actor who's known for dramatic pieces finally tackle like an action film, but it's an action film that really heavily relies on performances, and I thought the film relies more on performance than story. I think the story is a little bit kind of in the background a bit because it feels like there's two different stories going on. Where it feels like the first hour of the film feels like your standard action film of a guy trying to figure out how to seek out a potential villain who's destroying or bombing all over Europe. I'm trying to be careful with my words here. And then there's like the first hour literally feels like more action oriented centerpiece of bad guy going through a bunch of different not bad guy, good guy going through a bunch of different obstacles, some action sequences to seek out ways to find the bad guy and bring him down. That's what the first hour of the film feels like until there's a certain point in the movie where it kind of um I want to say flip it, but it puts in the scenario where the main protagonists really literally have to try to think outside the box to flush out the main bad guy. And then the second hour comes in and they introduce this whole new different obstacle or objective to or plan to seek out or to fish out the main bad guy. And it's interesting how they do it. When I first saw this film, I was a little bit confused, and I think it was just because there were certain story pieces that I was missing or just didn't catch on very well. Um, and I think it's a film where, as story wise, I think you really need to pay attention. Otherwise, I think you will miss certain points into the film where things just feel like they will make sense. Uh, because at least for me, from a traditional narrative throughout the whole film for like the first hour for traditional film, it would literally feel like the whole film where it's constantly feeling like you're good guy chasing the bad guy. But it didn't feel like that here. I feel like the second hour, the movie, as a story choice, tries to get a little bit more strategic, and I think in a smart way of fleshing out the villain. And it feels like a deconstruction a little bit of spy thrillers, especially just how the film was labeled out. Three performances here: Mark Strong, Russell Crowe, Leonardo DiCaprio, all do very well. But this is more on Leonardo DiCaprio's. This is more of his film because the movie chronicles him for like almost every minute of the of the film. But what I mean by like the film does something a little bit different towards the end, though. It does something I didn't expect for an action film, and I won't spoil it, but it does end into like a little interrogation instead of your traditional action set piece, and it was different. It felt very bold, and that's something I don't think you normally see in action films these days. Mostly mainstream. I feel like this film went under the radar during its time. I mean, it made its money back, but I do think this is a film, an action film that you should definitely check out. Uh, because I thought at least, and it's strange that action films don't normally get nominated, but I thought DiCaprio delivered literally one of his best performances here. Like literally, this guy is going through lengths, lying to his boss, to the Jordanian boss, to find ways to find the accurate information to fish out this bad guy, and it's very, very, I think, intelligently written, but it could be also very complicated because there's so much deception going on into this film. It actually has one of my favorite chase scenes in any action film so far. And it literally happens within the first after like within the first 25 minutes of the movie. They got this awesome raid action sequence and it involves in a chase sequence. And the way that it wraps up, I thought was just intense. And you don't expect it. And bold. Actually, no, bold's not the right word, but it was cool. This is actually one of the more earlier films I've seen Oscar Isaac in. It might be the first film I've seen him in. Yeah, it's the first film that I've literally seen Oscar Isaac in. He's also in there, but he's not in it for long. He's literally in it maybe for 10 minutes, but he's still in here. He's Leonardo DiCaprio's team player until he gets knocked off screen. A little spoiler alert, but hey, it's pretty interesting when you go back watching these older movies and you see these actors that you now know now, and you go back watching your older films. It's like, wait a minute, that's Oscar Isaac when he was in his earlier roles. Like, well, holy crap! And then that's that one actor. That's that one actor. Wow, that's pretty interesting. There is one thing I remember watching this film. I was struggling to grasp the structure of this movie. For whatever reason, and I got this vibe from watching a lot of Ridley Scott's movies, maybe for the exception of maybe a few of his movies, but a lot of his films feel slow. Like I remember the first hour dragged a bit because it felt like it had its own way of telling its story, and then they introduced this new obstacle in the second hour, and that part also felt a little slow. I don't know, maybe it was just me, maybe the film might have felt a little bit long, but regardless, I had this movie on DVD. I watched the hell out of it. It is one of my favorite action films, and I highly recommend checking it out if you feel like you want a good, unique espionage thriller. Body of Lies. Have you seen it? Comment below. Let me know if you have, and let me know what is your favorite underrated movie.